Hello and welcome into On the Preds with me, your host, Alex Doherty of A to Z Sports and Sean Smith of On the Forecheck. We are here to recap the Preds and talk plenty of hockey, and we have a playoff series to preview. What's up, Sean?
I'm ready for this playoff extravaganza, Alex. I'm pretty excited. I'm not going to lie.
We have a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
There is a lot that's happened since our last show, which was last Monday, and we have a playoff series to talk about, which is going to be very, very interesting, and especially because most of us were preparing for a different playoff series not even 48 hours ago.
Yeah.
So, wow, it has been crazy. I just want to say right off the bat, I think that there's a lot to this series that people are overlooking, and I think we're going to talk about that. I think you've got some really good stuff about why the Predators could have an advantage here. Obviously, the Avalanche are the favorites, but there's plenty of ways forward for the Nashville Predators to be competitive in this series, and if you can be competitive in this series, you can win the series, right?
Yeah, and I don't think, you say they're obviously the favorite, and it's not that they're just the favorite over the Nashville Predators. You put any team in their position and they're going to be the favorite. So
yeah,
it's not productive to kind of lean on that argument of, well, the Avalanche are the favorite to win this series, because you could put any other team except maybe the Panthers in the Predators' place, and I feel like they would have the advantage or at least be the favorite team to win. So
yeah,
I'm not gonna,
very good point.
I'm not going to read too much into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we are going to talk about this series, the major plot lines. We're going to talk about how the Predators can win, how the Avalanche can win, and we're also going to mention at least one player that can turn the tide of the series for each team. So that's a big part of later on. And, of course, we're going to talk about the goaltending situation for Nashville. As we know now, that is going to be a huge issue for the Nashville Predators. So before we get to all that, Sean, we have we have a new sponsor for the show. And I don't know if you know this, but in Nashville, or at least in Middle Tennessee, during the summer, it gets pretty hot. Did you know that?
I did know that. I've experienced it quite a few times.
Yes. So because it's going to get hot, you probably need to get your AC or your ductwork looked at, or maybe if you just want to improve the air quality of your home, you've got to talk to the folks at Brymac Mechanical. They have 3 locations in Middle Tennessee and Kentucky. The main hub is in Clarksville, commercial and residential HVAC, ductwork to improve air quality. Like I said, it's a family-owned business. Satisfaction guaranteed on all of your HVAC needs. You can go to BrymackAssociates.com is the website, or call them at 931-572-5742. All right. So we have to, before we talk about this Colorado series, we've got to talk about how we got here, right? How are we in this position? And by we, I mean just people watching. How are the Predators in this situation? So as we all know, the last week was an important one for seeding. The Predators lose to the Calgary Flames on Tuesday in overtime. And then they also lose Juuse Saros to an apparent injury. I reported this week that the injury is a high ankle sprain. I do not anticipate him to be ready for this first round of the playoffs, and he could be out a minimum of 2 weeks, just depending on the severity of the sprain. But it could be more like 4 to 6 weeks, which would put him basically out until like the Western Conference Final, or even beyond that. So high ankle sprains are no joke. They are painful. They're very difficult to bounce back from. It just takes rest. Like, you just have to let it heal on its own. So maybe Juuse Saros has some magical ankles down there that can just, like Wolverine, can bounce back. But I don't know. I don't think that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think the one thing you have to look at and maybe view this as a positive, not the whole fact that it happened, but hockey players, and more specifically goalies, they're very, very, very flexible. And I'd have to think that maybe the fact that there's a very intense stretching routine that happens before every game, and just what they do on a daily basis to stay limber enough to get into the positions they need to get into to defend the goal. I'd think that more so than, say, someone like me who is not a high caliber athlete, if I had a high ankle sprain, I'm sure the recovery period would be very long. But for somebody who maybe regularly stretches and uses all those things, the recovery time might be shortened. That's all
I had all these people commenting on the article there about that being like, oh, a high ankle sprain. I've had a high ankle sprain for 8 months and it's still not better. I'm like, okay, I'm sure that you do have a high ankle sprain. I'm sure that you are physically active. You are not a professional athlete.
They're just built.
I mean, I will say this. I did have one person, I can't remember her name, who was a figure skater, who said a high ankle sprain for figure skaters is a big deal. Like it takes a long time because the pressure on the skates, you know, I mean, your ankles are such a huge part of your edge work and of your ability to skate. So I'm not discrediting all of it. I mean, some of it was pretty interesting to hear people talk about, but some people were like, oh, he'll never recover from this high ankle sprain because I haven't. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think I don't know, like, I don't know how to explain that professional athletes are they're on a different level. I mean, not just skill wise, but their body is their instrument. Their body is a machine in the sense that, you know, they maintain it differently than someone like me does. I mean, Alex, I know that you're a hockey player as well. So maybe your training regimen routine is different than mine for just my daily activities. But, you know, they're eating on a totally different level. Their nutrition is completely different. Their exercise, their training, it's all, you know, their body is what earns them their money. And so they take care of it like you would, you know, any of your really fancy tools that you might need for another job. And when you do that, I think recovery time changes. So I'm hoping that, you know, regardless of the people out there with the 8-month injuries that I'm sure are real, I'm sure that would be what would happen to me if I had a high ankle sprain. But, you know, hopefully it's different for Saros and he can get back healthy quicker than people would think.
Yeah, from what I've seen and from what I've heard, like 2 weeks is the minimum, and so the first week would be almost over. I mean, as of game 1, that would be 1 week, right, of the injury happening, and then 2 weeks would be taking it all the way through like game 5, basically. So if 2 weeks is the minimum. The bare minimum you could see Juuse Saros back in this series is like game 6.
Yeah.
Which, you know, a lot of people have been saying, oh, Avs in 3, you know, it's like, so I don't know. That's a long way away, but that would be like the minimum I would think. But I definitely don't think he's going to play this week.
No, I think for all the concern over the course of the whole season about whether or not he's being played too much, you know, you look at now that you're dealing with an injury, the last thing you want to do is rush him back in time for game 5. I mean, you've got to say, if your team's going to go far, they need to be able to go far in front of either of the other 2 goalies that are with the team, and don't rush Saros back for a last ditch effort. So,
right. Okay, so that happens on Tuesday. Then we find out about the injury Wednesday and Thursday. Thursday, the Predators go on the road, and they end up beating Colorado. Shootout winner by Matt Duchene, who also scored in that game. A massive win that sets up what is a very easy route for the Predators to the first wild card spot on Friday. 1 point against Arizona, either that they get or that Dallas loses to Anaheim, and it's clinched. But things cannot be easy for the Nashville Predators because even with a 4-0 lead, the Predators lose a 4-0 lead, losing for the first time in regulation this year when leading after 2. That crazy record, 31-0. They were 31-0-1 when leading after 2. Finally, they lose a game in regulation, 5-4 to Arizona. I was very upset. It has nothing to do with the Predators. I was mad because I had written everything out preparing for the Calgary Flames to be the opponent. And it was just so clearly ready to go. And I had to, at midnight, 12:15, I had to delete everything and rewrite everything for them to face the Colorado Avalanche. I was so angry. I went to bed angry. And
that's what you get when you don't procrastinate, Alex.
I know. I was just like, I mean, I had prepared that like kind of before the game too, a little bit of it. And then like during the game, I was like, 4-0, this is like done. Oh my gosh. I mean, I was so mad. Which I've done that many times. I've prepared pieces many times. I just normally prepare both sides. I didn't do that. My fault. But so, and of course, Dallas beat Anaheim. So yeah, it locks the Preds into the Avs, and now we have this first round matchup with Colorado, which is one that many people have said is the worst matchup, but I think as we've alluded to, and as you talked about before the show, there is a lot to think about, and I don't want to get too much into it. I want to save this for the next segment, but I don't know that either route would have been all that easy. Like, it's not like the Calgary route. There's one advantage to the Calgary route that I think you would have if you went that way, and it has nothing to do with Calgary. I think being in the Pacific bracket would be better for the Predators, because if you beat Colorado, now you got to face the winner of Minnesota, St. Louis. Those are tough teams. I'm not saying that LA and Edmonton are not tough teams, but I'm pretty sure Minnesota and St. Louis are harder than those two teams. So, anyways, and it's not like it really matters. They are going to have a tough road anyways because they're a wild card team, and that's just how it goes. But before we actually go to the playoff series, who do you think? Because this helps us wrap up the previous week. So David Reddick started Thursday, Colorado. Big save, Dave. Big crossbar, Dave runs into the crossbar. If you didn't see that, you got to go check that GIF out. That's hilarious.
He was trying to get the puck. It's okay.
I know what he was trying to do. That was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Who put a crossbar there? I mean, who knew that would be there? I know, right?
You can't just expect to turn around in the crease and run into a goal.
Good thing David Reddick was wearing a helmet, because it was a construction zone over there for him.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. So David Reddick starts Thursday, and he gets the win. I mean, honestly, the first period, it was like, wow, he is just giving up everything. But he locked it down, and he stepped it up. I mean, he got a little lucky here and there, but he definitely improved. The problem with David Reddick is, and I've heard several analysts say this, you know, he's a guy that he's going to make the first save. He's not likely to make the second one. He's going to give up rebounds. He's gonna flail in net. He doesn't have great lateral movement. He's not an incredibly athletic guy like Rene or Saros. He's fine, but he's just not that level. So that's Reddick. He gets the win. It was a struggle, though. Then Ingram plays on Friday and gets the loss. He only had like 20. How many saves did he have? 22 saves, something like that.
Weren't a lot. Wasn't a lot of shots.
I mean, Ingram, to me, I think is the better play for game one, but he didn't do himself any favors. Like, he had there were at least 2 goals that were deflected that really aren't his problem. I mean, those are going to go in. But he definitely looked a little he didn't have the confidence that you'd want to see. That's not really a surprise to me, because the guy just went from Milwaukee to basically competing for the Nashville for the playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
But man, what did you think about the goalie situation there for Reddick versus Ingram?
Well, like you said, I don't think Ingram really did himself any favors in that game. You're really hoping, or I'm sure we were all really hoping that, you know, everyone had said when you saw Saros go down, you know, okay, well, they can call up Ingram. Ingram's been doing really well, and they'll be just fine. And so what you kind of expect to see, especially against a team like Arizona, and when I say a team like Arizona, what I mean is a team that's at the bottom of the standings. Yeah. You know, I don't mean a certain way they're constructed. I mean, they have players that can shoot. They have guys that are good at hockey. It's just that this season they have not been very successful. So
they didn't even have their top players that game. I mean,
it should have been, by all rights and standards, a perfect setup for Ingram to look like an all-star. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. And so I think you have to kind of tender your expectations kind of alongside that performance and say, okay, so like you said, Alex, you know, he's coming from Milwaukee to this is a game for a playoff spot. You need to do well. And so you say, well, that's a high stakes game and it's kind of may have thrown him off. But the reality is, if the next game he starts is game 1 of the playoffs, that's also a high stakes game.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't really bode well to say, well, that was a unique situation. You could say maybe he just needed one game in the net to kind of get back to NHL speed. I mean, but we'll both have to be really, really honest here. That Arizona game speed is not the same as Colorado game speed. So
No.
that argument doesn't really help either. You said you think that Ingram is probably the best call. I agree with you, but I don't know that Hines goes with Ingram. I'd say he probably goes with Reddick to start game 1.
And the other, I'm kind of leaning that way. I think he might go with Reddick game 1. The other thing is, if the Predators were to be so fortunate that in Colorado in game 1, they go out to a 2-0, 3-0, 4-0 lead, the Colorado response is going to be even more dangerous than Arizona. I mean, not only are they going to be pissed off and trying to score to tie it up, they have a world of more talent. I mean, they have so much more talent than Arizona. It's not like you can just count on your scores to go give them a big lead, and then your goalie can just sit back and not have to do anything. That's going to be a very difficult road if you have that situation. So I am kind of leaning Reddick too. I'm almost thinking Riddick's going to be the game 1 starter. But I could also see Ingram. Ingram has played 2 games now. No, 3 games. Was that his 3rd game?
He's played in 3.
Played in 3, yeah.
I don't know if he started 3.
His first start was the Minnesota game earlier in the year, back in October. And that was a big game at the time. Obviously not this scenario, but I mean, that was a pretty big game. The Predators needed a win there, and he helped them get it. I mean, that was a road game, atmosphere, tough opponent. But that was a long time ago, and Colorado is very good. So my edge would be 55% Dave Reddick starts, 45% Connor Ingram starts, a very slight edge to Reddick in game 1.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd say, again, if I am the head coach, and I'm not, clearly, I have to take a really hard look and just, it may come down to who's practicing well. It may have nothing to do with the performance in the last 2 games when it's this close. I'd say you go in, you see how they're doing in practice, and you say, okay, this guy looks like he's seeing the puck well. We're going to start him. And you just hope for the best.
Okay. Let's go ahead and jump full body into the playoff series. Before we do that, I want to mention HelloFresh again because, HelloFresh is America's #1 meal kit. Everyone knows that. It's all about convenience with HelloFresh. The ingredients come pre-proportioned. You're not overbuying and wasting food. It's easier than ever to get filling meals on the table. Family-friendly options, quick and easy recipes. You can also, they have this new Hello Custom offerings. You can customize your favorite dishes. You can swap out a protein or a side for a different one. You can upgrade your meal to be kind of more how you like it, adding protein to a veggie meal, for example. More choices, more variety, more meals, truly tailored to you. We did the thing this past week. I think I mentioned this. We sat off this week because my wife was out of town and we had a whole bunch of things going on. So we took our week off from HelloFresh. We did that in the app. It was very, very easy. And now we're back on. We just got our box meal yesterday, and we're going to cook some box meals this year. I didn't even look at the recipes. I'm sure they're going to be good because there's 50 different weekly options. You can skip weeks if you need to. Like I said, you can change your delivery date, all that stuff. You've got to give it a try. HelloFresh.com/Preds16. Use that code Preds16 for up to 16 free meals and 3 free gifts. Go to HelloFresh.com/Preds16. Okay. The Colorado Avalanche.
Oh.
So when I look at this matchup, the Avs have a significant advantage in the following areas. At this point, goaltender for sure, because Darcy Kemper's been very good. Pavel Francouz has been very good as a backup. I think we'll see Darcy Kemper until something bad happens. Overall depth, I think, goes to Colorado. I mean, like, their scoring depth has been much better than the Predators. They've scored plenty more goals. Plenty more goals. They're offensively, their forward lines are just much more balanced. Speed, give them an advantage in speed for sure. I think you give them an advantage in special teams, though I will point out later on it's not quite as big a margin as you might think. There's a particular reason why the special teams advantage goes to them, but it's not as big as you think. And then forward skill. I mean, they have so much skill all over that team, and not just forward skill, but defenseman skill. I mean, Cale Makar, Devin Taves, Sam Girard, the rest of the defense is all really skilled, good players. So the Predators, I think, have the advantage in physicality. We know that. We know they're a much, much more physical team than pretty much anyone in the league. That is how they've gotten to this point. And possibly defensive depth. I don't know if that's necessarily the case yet, because I haven't seen too much out of, when I think about the fact that the Predators can ice guys like Jeremy Davies and Mark Borowiecki, as opposed to the bottom of the Colorado lineup, which has some defensive questions. Like, I think that they've got hang on, let me pull that up real quick. I think the defensive depth goes slightly to the Nashville Predators, but I don't think it's going to be a huge advantage. I think it's all about the top four on the defense anyways. Yeah. In which case, I think that it's almost a wash because of how good Roman Yossi's been, but Colorado has a great defense too. So the defense might be just a wash at this point.
I think, I think you're probably right in that. And you got to remember, and I'm not speaking directly to you, Alex, but I mean for everyone out there listening or watching, when you get to the playoffs, you're going to see your top four play more minutes than you did in the regular season. The reason you have those third pairing defenders out there is to give those guys a break. And you just want someone out there who's competent and can do what they need to do, maybe use them on the penalty kill, things like that. So as you go into the playoffs, you're going to see, ice time for someone like Roman Josi, for Cale Makar go up, and ice time for those guys on the third pairing go down a little bit. So that's that. I mean, depth wise, maybe the third pairing defenders can go a little deeper for the Predators, but you're just not going to see them as much.
Yeah. The just while I've got it pulled up now. I don't know that he'll play in the playoff, but they've got Jack Johnson and Josh Manson, and those players are not nearly what they were. I mean, Jack Johnson especially. But if they play Jack Johnson in the playoffs, that's going to be an advantage for the Predators because he's pretty slow. Bowen Byram is a young guy that they like, and Curtis McDermott, he'll probably play. Eric Johnson's a good player, but he's also pretty old. Again, I think you're right. I think it's all about the top four. I mean, it's going to be, let's say top three. Let's say the top three defensemen for the Nashville Predators. That's Roman Josi, Dante Fabro, Matthias Ekholm, and Alex Carrier. I think is let's put Alex Carrier instead of Dante Fabro. Let's put Josi, Carrier, and Matthias Ekholm. That's I think the top three best defensemen for the Predators right now. And the Avalanche have Cale Makar, Devin Taves, Sam Girard. I think the Predators have a very slight advantage in that because of how much better maybe an Ekholm or a Carrier is over a Sam Girard, if that makes any sense. The best 1-2 punch is definitely Cale Makar, Devin Taves. But I think the Predators have the better of the top three. It's really close in terms of the blue liners.
I think you're right. And you have to remember too that if Sam Girard's on the ice with Forsberg, then he's really not there because Forsberg's going to make him look silly, as is his custom. I'm not sure like what happened when Girard was with the Predators between those two, but Forsberg certainly seems to just have a goal to make him look silly every time.
He only played like 7 games or whatever. They got him just under that. There was like the 8-game barrier. They had to wait. They had to get him under that, and then they traded him.
I'm just saying, it just looks like, I don't know, like it's almost cruel what Forsberg's done to Girard. Just there's so many you know, you think about like the NBA slam dunk posters from the 90s where you can see the guy getting dunked on and you've been posterized and all this stuff. And like, that's just Sam Girard is just that to Philip Forsberg. It's really unfortunate.
I think that, yeah, no, exactly. Sam Girard definitely having nightmares already. But forward-wise, I think the Avalanche have the advantage overall. I mean, saying nothing of the Predators' like top producers, Duchesne, Forsberg, Johansson, Granlund. I mean, those are incredible players. Once you get beyond the top three for the Avalanche, you've still got some incredible players. I mean, obviously the top three, Ranton and Nathan McKinnon and Burakovsky, who plays with them usually. Nazem Kadri has had an incredible year. Valerie Nichushkin, the one-time Dallas Stars cast-off, has had a resurgence. I mean, he's been in. Not going to play. Alex Newhook, Darren Helm has been pretty good. Arturi Lehkonen has been very good. Nico Sturm. All these guys have had just really solid years. Their bottom line, Andrew Cogliano, probably that's Darren Helm, and then I guess Alex Newhook is on the bottom line.
I think so.
No, Logan O'Connor. Are you getting a message about? Never mind. Are you good? Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I got a weird message. Anyway, go ahead. I think the Avalanche have a much better forward depth, even though defensive depth could go to the Nashville Predators possibly. All right, but I'm sorry. What? Go ahead.
Well, you talked about their lines being balanced, and I think the important thing to remember is you take a look at the Predators and how, you know, you and I, anybody else out there covering the team, fans have all of these. You know, there's been a lot of shuffling going on, at least beyond the first line. You're still seeing questions about what to do with guys like Ellie Tolvanen, whether or not Matt Luff is slotting in on any given night. You know, those are questions that have to be answered on a nightly basis. Whereas I feel like the Avalanche, you pretty much know exactly who you're getting on every line every night. And, you know, just a testament to the fact that all those guys are having good years. You know, this is one of the best teams in the league. You know, you're not going to have a team that's going to be one of like the top 2, top 3 teams without having everybody on the team having a good year. And, you know, that just speaks to that line balancing. That just speaks to the fact that those lines know each other and work together very well. Unfortunately, when you're still kind of tinkering around with what your fourth line looks like or who's playing with who on the second line going into the playoffs, you definitely can't claim to have that advantage. And I think that's going to be an issue for the Predators. Yeah.
So this is not a great matchup for the Predators, but I think that there is a way through, which we'll talk about here in a second. I also think this. So this is very different for the Nashville Predators of the past, but I don't think that you're going to have to, like, the Preds are not going to be able to win a bunch of like low scoring 1-0, 2-1 kind of games. Like, they almost want it to be a shootout, which is odd because you would think that the Predators would be better suited to not have to score a bunch of goals on the Avalanche. But I think that they could do that. I think that if the game opens up and there's odd man rushes up and down the ice and there's plenty of shots on goal and stuff, I think the Predators could win a couple games like 5-4, 6-5, something like that. I mean, they've got the scoring touch to be able to do that. They've got plenty of guys that can put the puck in the net. I mean, we haven't even really seen the Jeannot line get going over the last few weeks, and like that line can put the puck in the net. So it's like I don't think there's going to be any defensive gems like that. If you remember the 2017 Cup run, the entire series against the St. Louis Blues was a complete defensive, like, backyard fight. That's what that was. And the Predators won that because they had a better defense and they had a hot goaltender. This is similar to how the Predators have won other series in the past. This is going to have to be different. I think they're going to have to go out with the mindset of, we got to put goals up on the board because we don't know what we're going to get in net. We don't know how. I mean, Colorado can take over a game in stretches with just incredible offense. And then there's the special teams. Well, first of all, let me say this. The Colorado is 4th in scoring in the league. Nashville's 12th. Colorado's 23rd in defense. So that's kind of what I was trying to say there is like Nashville can score on that defense. Nashville can score on the Colorado Avalanche. Predators are 16th in defense. I think that's almost like doesn't really matter because the Avalanche are so good. But it's more balanced than you would think, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So special teams. The biggest problem for this special teams matchup is the Avalanche power play versus the Nashville penalty kill. But the Nashville power play is actually, technically ranked higher than the Colorado power play, 6th. Nashville's power play is 6th in terms of success rate. Colorado's is ranked 7th. I don't think anyone in the league would take Nashville's power play over Colorado's power play, including myself. But it's not a bad one. I mean, they've been pretty successful. And the Colorado penalty kill, 15th in the league, middle of the road. Nashville's is 18th, a little bit worse than that. Both power plays are pretty good. When there's a power play in this game, expect goals to happen for both sides. If that makes any sense.
It makes sense to me. And I think one of the biggest things I would say, if the Predators could commit to keeping that first PK unit or power play unit, out there for the entirety of the power play, I think that number would actually go up. But you've seen a lot of situations this season where it seems like the first unit is kind of cooking, getting stuff going, and then the opposition gets like a lucky clear or something like that, and you think, hey, go back down, get set back up, re-enter the zone, and try again for another minute. But instead, they go ahead and switch units. And I haven't seen much success out of that second unit. And I think that's really – you would see a lot more if they would give that unit another minute out there to try to get it going again. So hopefully that's a change they make. And I think that may – when you said you don't think anybody would take Nashville's power play unit over Colorado's, probably right. But I think if you left that group out there for 2 minutes, it might be worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. The top unit is the successful unit. The second unit is bad. Second unit is very bad. Okay. Let's go ahead and jump to this. Sorry, I've had some connection issues. I hope it's not disrupting too much. Are you having any connection issues on your side?
Nope, for once. Okay. I'm all good.
I don't know what's happening. I'm just getting these weird messages like that my connection's bad, but I think I'm good. All right, so let's talk about this. How do the Predators win this series? If you were to fill in this blank, the Preds win if blank happens, or if blank is true, and then also the Avs win if blank is true. How would you phrase that? So I'm actually going to start here, if that's all right, because I actually wrote about this for A to Z Sports.com. You can go there and check it out. I wrote about 3 ways that the Nashville Predators can win. And I will talk about one of them. I'll let you go read the other 2.
Oh, I already have.
I think the Predators can win if they continue their success against Darcy Kuemper. For those that don't know, the Predators have actually been pretty good against Darcy Kuemper in his career. He has not been a stonewall for them. He's been okay. He's been probably about league average in terms of his production against the Predators. But he's got a .909 save percentage career against the Predators. That's in 11 games. And most recently, the Predators have put plenty of goals on him. They scored 4 and 5 goals on him in the last 2 games, like an .861 save percentage. I think that if Darcy Kuemper is the goalie for the Colorado Avalanche and they don't replace him, I think the Predators have a chance, because if you can score goals against this team, you're going to have a chance to win. Like the biggest problem that I would see is if the Predators faced a red hot goalie that just didn't allow them to go in, that was stopping them left and right. that would probably end up in like a sweep or at least a 5-game loss. I think that they can score goals against Darcy Kuemper, and if they can do that, they have a chance to win the series.
Who did you say? Did you mention in that article that was it Duchesne that's had particular success against Kuemper?
He's scored 3 goals in 2 games on him this year.
Yeah, and I think that's something, I definitely agree with you. I'm not going to say I obviously have.
I think 2 of those goals were power play goals, just to clarify. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, of course they were. I'm not like I'm not going to give my opinion here and say that because it's different than yours that I disagree with you. I think you're exactly right, but I definitely want to point out that when you look at the Colorado record overall, it's very astonishing, but the Predators' record against them is a little bit more encouraging. And especially when you look at their record against Kuemper, then you say, okay, maybe Alex is onto something here. He's got a point. John Hines has said before that they should really just call the game goalie and not hockey, because that's what it really comes down to. So if you can,
it's very true.
If you can figure out Kuemper and light him up, then it may not really matter. If he goes on a hot streak and shuts everything down, then they're going to be hung out to dry. But so here's mine. If you're ready for it, are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the Preds can win, and I want to say I really enjoyed your article. Number one, you see the game differently than I do, so that's good. And but here's kind of how I see things, and it all goes back to this. If you think back to the beginning of the season when the Avalanche and the Predators met before, all it took to really throw Colorado off was Mattias Ekholm. Now, you and I talked before the show, and you pointed out that for a long time, Mattias Ekholm was kind of the disturber on the team, kind of the pest that would go in and get the other team thrown off. But here's the thing. At best, he's 4th on the team now in stirring up stuff. And realistically, if all it took was Ekholm to get under their skin, wait until Colorado has to play against Nick Cousins every night, Tanner Jeannot every night, Mark Borowiecki every night. Because, when we talk about a physical game, we're not really talking about the fact that the Predators fight. I mean, that's definitely an aspect to it. It's a natural result of the physical play. But the Predators are a team that are going to finish every check. They're a team that's going to force you to gain or earn every single, inch of ice that you get. And as long as they're doing that, it's going to bother the Avalanche, because they're a team that's used to getting through the zone quickly. They're a team that's used to entering the zone cleanly and getting set up. You start forcing them to really question whether or not they want to go after a puck, or whether or not it's worth trying to get through the blue line as opposed to dumping and chasing. You're going to throw them off their game. And again, back to what I said before, if Mattias Ekholm is all it took to get them thrown off earlier this season, wait until they get a load of the other guys on the team at this point. You can throw them off their game by getting under their skin. And I think if you can get under their skin, you force a lot of errors on that team. You force a lot of mistakes. And the Predators need to be able to take advantage of those mistakes. But I think as long as they can do that, they stick to what their typical game plan has been all season long, I think it could create, over the course of a series, as opposed to maybe just the first game, a situation where you're forcing Colorado to play a game they don't want to play. And it's a game that the Predators have played all year.
Yeah, I think you've touched on something that I think a lot of fans and a lot of people are going to they're going to point to as either the thing that will win Nashville the series or the thing that will lose Nashville the series. Because the physical part of this is, it is such a dangerous game to play. Like, you are putting all of your – it's such a risk to go into each game thinking we're going to push them around and force them to make mistakes. Because if the referees don't see it that way, you're going to be sitting in a lot of penalty boxes. and you're going to be watching a lot of goals go up on the board. And and I just think, what's the saying? Like, a falling knife has no handle. Do they really want to play that game? Do they really want to try, like, just leaning into that part of their game as a way to try to win? I don't think that they do. I think that, like, I'm not saying that they can't be physical and they can't finish checks and stuff like that, but the stuff after the whistle, fighting, in trying to get someone like a Nazem Kadri to come after them, which I think that's definitely going to happen because he's always in it after the whistle. I mean, there's going to be a fight between Mark Borowiecki and Nazem Kadri at some point in this series. Probably between, anyone else on the Avalanche team and Tanner Jeannot. Tanner Jeannot is going to do something. Like, he's going to get in a fight.
I hope so.
Know, but so I'm really hesitant to say that the Nashville Predators should lean into that, because I think it's too much of a risk in terms of, like, how they could. I think they have enough skill to beat Colorado with skill. They don't need to physically blow them up. I will say this. I think if they lose the series and they lose it by kind of the method you're describing of just being the bully in the room, I think a lot of people will feel better about that. I remember how many people were so angry that the Predators got just, like, pushed around by the Dallas Stars in 2019, pushed around by the Carolina Hurricanes, even going back, getting just drug around the ice by the Winnipeg Jets in the 7-game series.
Oh, literally. People
were so angry that they got that's how they lost. Not that they couldn't score more goals, that they got pushed around. So, like, I think people will feel better about that if they lose that way. I just don't know that it's I think it's too risky. I think they have to back off from that. They have to take a little bit of that edge off in order to not, find themselves get in one fight and then find themselves down 3 goals 5 minutes later. It's just like, it's such a risk, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk, but Alex, serious question here. Can you tell a rainbow to not be beautiful?
You cannot.
So how are you going to tell the Predators to not be physical?
I'm not. You can't. They're not. You're not going to tell them to be physical or to not be physical. They have to find the balance better than they've found it in the past. Like, they've got to find the Calgary Flames game from a week ago is a good example.
Yeah.
They did not find the balance there. They got into too much stuff. It was too – I mean, look, the Matt Duchene, Matthew Tkachuk thing, that was really, really close to being advantage Preds. But the ref didn't see it that way, and so they had to deal with the power play or deal with the penalty kill. You can't always put yourself in a situation where you're relying on a third-party official to make the call. I think that the Avalanche did more bad here than the Predators did bad. So I just think that it's too risky. But especially given the special teams discrepancy. But could you bait someone like let's see who on the Predator I need to check and see who on the Avalanche leads in penalty minutes, because I'm sure it's
McDermott.
Huh?
It's McDermott.
McDermott? Okay.
Yeah, I looked that up. I did research, Alex.
Good job. Curtis McDermott. So yeah, I think it's a very good chance Curtis McDermott is going to get in a fight with somebody. Curtis McDermott.
100% chance.
Gabriel Landeskog, we still don't know if he's going to play. I just looked that up. He's been out indefinitely. I don't know what that means exactly. Who knows? I don't know. That's kind of interesting. Nazem Kadri, like, something's going to happen there. But other than that, they don't have a ton of guys that rack up a lot of penalty minutes. I mean,
no.
When Nathan McKinnon is their 5th highest penalty minute guy, and he's not a
brawler,
not a fire starter or anything.
No.
So, could you bait someone like a Curtis McDermott to getting a bad penalty? Probably. Could you?
Yes.
Could you bait Nazem Kadri? Absolutely.
Probably.
You're going to get Nazem Kadri to do something stupid. Maybe even get himself suspended. I mean, that's happened before with him. So there's a lot there, but I don't see that. All right, let's briefly let's talk about the Avalanche win. This is pretty easy, I think. The Avalanche win if blank happens. I'll let you go first on this one. I think this one's pretty easy.
I mean, there's a variety of things that we could bring up, but I think one of the biggest things is that the Avalanche win if they transition well. Really, it's not if they transition; it's if they're allowed to transition well.
Like
I've seen
counterattack kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been a weak spot for the Predators, especially over the last month or so. Is you've seen a lot of situations where an errant pass, or even just not an errant pass, but just a puck that's misplayed leads to a quick turnover, and you see an odd man rush, or you just see an absolute breakaway. And the Avalanche are a team that can absolutely torch teams with that. And I'm afraid that if the Predators can't kind of get some of that kind of minor, like very simple gameplay stuff under control, that you're going to see a situation where you got a couple of Preds streaking down the ice trying to catch up to somebody who's got a one-on-one with a Dave Reddick or Connor Ingram, and that's probably going to turn into some goals quickly. Again, there's a variety of things that I think you could put in this blank and be right. But if I look back over the past month or so of Predators gameplay, I'm seeing a lot more of that kind of stuff happening in it. I've blamed a lot of it on passing, but it's more than just that. So if they're allowed to get that puck and go, it's game over.
Yeah. Transition play, counterattacking, all that stuff is just the Predators are going to have to stay back. They cannot allow their defense to activate every play. Unless it's Roman Josi, they do not need to be jumping up into the play because they've got to stay back and protect against that stuff. Give your goaltender a good chance to save the puck. All right.
Yep.
In my opinion, the Avalanche win there's a lot of things. I mean, all right. I mean, I'll start with just if they get Gabriel Landeskog back. I kind of forgot about that aspect of this, but if they get him back, like they're probably going to win because that's even more talent up front for them to beat the Predators. I think I'm going to go with the easy route here and just say if the Predators don't have a goalie, if Nashville flounders and Dave Reddick starts game 1, he gets lit up. Connor Ingram starts game 2, he gets lit up, and then their game 3, they don't even know who they're going with. It's over. I mean, if they do not have a goalie, the quote you said from John Hines, it might as well just be called goalie instead of hockey because that's such a huge part of it. If they cannot, if the Predators cannot find a goalie that can provide any consistent ability to keep them in a game, that'll be it. Avalanche will win. Real quickly, let's talk about one player that can turn the tide for each team because I have one in mind for the Predators. And let's just do one overall. We don't have to do one for each team. I was just thinking one overall. One player that I think in my mind for the Predators that could take over the series, that could dominate and really turn the tide. And I'm thinking specifically could go out and win a game in Colorado this week and force and change home ice advantage, kind of flip the script on the overall narrative of the series and get the thing going in Nashville's favor. Do you have one in mind?
Yeah. Do you?
Yes. All right. I'll go ahead and give mine.
Okay, go ahead. I thought we were going to say the same one based on the way you were setting it up, and I was a little nervous.
Mine is Philip Forsberg.
Okay, tell me why.
Because he's done it before.
Yeah.
In the Colorado Avalanche series against the Predators in 2018, where the only other time this team's met in the playoffs, Philip Forsberg won that series offensively. He totally dominated them in, I think it was game 5. No, it was game 4. So the Predators were up 2-0, and then in game 3, the Avalanche won game 3 pretty handedly, if I remember. And then game 4, Forsberg went off. And game 5, I believe the Avalanche won that one, and then the Forsberg helped win in game 6, and that won the series for them. That, in my opinion, Philip Forsberg is the one guy that could go out individually and get angry and score a goal or two in a really big moment and beat the Avalanche by himself, regardless of what happens at the other end of the ice. Philip Forsberg is the one that I think could absolutely turn the tide for the Predators. And boy, what would that do for where the negotiations are at in terms of his contract? All right, who's yours?
Well, I mean, it shouldn't come as any surprise, but I would say Roman Josi, and I'm going to say Josi for pretty much the same reason you said Forsberg, is that maybe not specifically Colorado, but you've seen a lot of situations, especially in the playoffs, where Roman Josi has gone out and just literally put the team on his back and done everything he needs to do in order to make a win happen. And I think too, there's probably, I don't know, you think about individual awards and stuff and honors that, maybe it's not as big of a deal to the players as we like to make of it. Especially with, looking back on the season with the goal race between Forsberg and Duchesne. But you think about the Norris Trophy, and, what you've got here with these two teams is a perfect chance to see a head-to-head Norris matchup. And so
that'd be awesome.
You're going to see some good defenders playing hockey, but you're going to see two of the best in the league going head-to-head. And if there's ever a time for Roman Josi to shine, it's going to be against the stiffest competition. So I feel like that kind of sets up a potential situation for Josi to go out, put the team on his back, and drag them to round 2. Yeah,
that's a good one. Yosi's a good one. You know what? I will actually throw one out for the Avalanche. You don't have to throw one out for the Avalanche if you don't want to, but I just need to get my list here. Where's my list? So, okay. Sorry, I'm trying to.
Well, I've got one for Colorado.
Okay. I would say for Colorado, the one that could turn the tide for the series for the Avalanche, in case somehow the Predators make this, like a longer series. I could see. Well, let me hear yours first.
I would go with the goalie, Darcy Kemper, and I think the reason for that is because they kind of have had his number, and if he can show up and he can shut them down, I think that makes this a very easy series for Colorado to win. I think it makes it one they can get out of pretty quickly and get on to the second round unscathed. Straight up.
I'm going to go with Nazem Kadri.
Okay.
I think if Kadri is able to get in the head of a Nick Cousins, or a Matt Duchesne, or maybe a Forsberg or an Ekholm or a Josi, get into their head and get them to commit a bad penalty, maybe even get them to do something really bad and get themselves suspended, something like that. He has a history of that kind of stuff. I think if he's able to do that, that would probably seal it, because he doesn't even, aside from any of his on ice ability, which he's been very good this year, 28 goals, 59 assists. That's crazy. His ability to disrupt the opponent is always there. So Nazem Kadri would be mine.
Well, and two, you mentioned if you could get someone like Matt Duchesne to get thrown off. I mean, you look at those disruptors, and typically you think they're going to try to get a guy who is known for getting, thrown off. Like, you think about Nick Cousins, he doesn't always go after, their top scorer. Sometimes he goes after a guy he knows he can get a reaction from. But if you do, you've seen with the game against Calgary the other night that you can get in Matt Duchesne's head and you can get him to react. That's probably not the best thing for the other team to know. Because they could target someone like that. And what's bad is you take players like that don't get involved in that kind of aspect of the game as much, and their reactions aren't as measured. They're not as familiar with what they can get away with or what they can and can't do. You get an emotional reaction. And then, that's when problems happen. So I think you're right. You take Kadri, if he can get into somebody's head, that could really turn the tide for them, big time.
Mm-hmm. So the series breaks down like this. Game 1 is Tuesday at Colorado, 8:30 p.m. start. We've got some late starts here, although not as late as it would have been if it was Calgary, by the way. So we've got about 30 minutes extra sleep tonight.
Ooh.
Tuesday, game 1. Thursday, game 2. And then the series comes to Nashville Saturday for Game 3, a 3:30 start. Love it. I love the Saturday 3:30 start thing. You just get down there early. You spend the entire day in Nashville, at downtown Nashville. Attend the game. It's just that's the best right there for me. That is Valhalla for me. Just a full day where there's a hockey game as well, and then Monday versus Colorado is the Game 4, so like they get a Monday game 8:30, and after that we don't know. But if they have a Game 5, Wednesday May 11th would be Game 5. That'll be at Colorado, and then Friday Game 6, and then Sunday Game 7. So I don't know. I hesitate to make predictions. I generally hesitate to. But do you have one? Do you have a prediction on the series?
No, I don't. I feel like after one game, I can make a better prediction than I can just out here raw like this. You know, it's.
I have one prediction. I have one prediction. My only prediction is that I think it goes 6 games.
Okay, that's a prediction.
I don't know who wins. I think it would go 6 games, and either the Predators are winning the thing in 6 at home, or the Avalanche win it in 6. So that's all I got for you. I think it goes 6 games.
I think that's a safe. I think you're probably right. I think
it's probably safe. Yeah, probably too safe, to be honest.
Well, I mean, you start hot taking out here, and the next thing you know, you end up on old takes exposed or whatever it is.
Well, I see that the Predators have had so much go well this year that they can win 2 games against this. At the very least, they can win 2 games. I know the Avalanche could win 4. So I think the Predators can win at least 2 games. So, I mean, if I was to lean, I would say Avs in 6. But I mean, you know, if this game were to go, if the Predators were in a situation where they could close it out at home again in 6 games, Friday May 13th, Game 6 at home to win, I could see it happening. I really could. But, you know, maybe some of that would depend on you know, if Juuse Saros was somehow able to come back early, and that could be a factor too. Can't forget about that. That's true. That would be over 2 weeks. I mean, that would be 2.5 weeks since his injury. So don't forget that.
I think if the Preds can find a way to pour on the goals, they can just open things up, make it a high scoring affair, then I'd say that they have as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah.
If the games stay tight and, you know, they're not opening Kemper up very much, and they're not kind of, you know, running up the score, then that's where I think you see trouble. So that's why I'll feel better after one game to make a prediction. But
there you go. Okay. That does it for our show. You can check out all of our hockey coverage at A2ZSports.com, and please also go to ontheforecheck.com as well. You can follow me on Twitter at AlexDarty1. Follow Shaun on Twitter at SCSOTF. And we will see everyone next week. Huge week this week. We'll see everyone next week.